morning, scholars. Very good. Welcome to the Foundation for Hispanic Education. For those of you that have been here, welcome again. For those of you who have not, I would like to let you know that we have 3 free public charter schools in East San Jose. We have 2 on this campus, Latino College Preparatory Academy, Roberto Cruz Leadership Academy, and we have 1 off-site on the site of Yerba Buena High School, Luis Valdez Leadership Academy. I want to thank specifically our Board of Education for always allowing this to be a community space. Our board president, Dr. Jimenez. And our other board member, Trustee Rudy Rodriguez. Also want to acknowledge our founder, who we can dedicate all of this to, his son, Roberto Cruz. And his lovely wife, Raquel, who I'm so happy, and we're blessed that she works here too. So thank you, staff, for getting all of this organized. I know it's a heavy lift. I appreciate all of you, and I really want to appreciate our scholars for fundraising, for getting everything together, and having some really great questions for our candidates tonight. So welcome, everybody. I'm happy you're here, and we'll get on with tonight's event.
Here we go.
Miss Darlene.
Oh, and I didn't even switch
Tennis?
it. Yes.
Yes.
So the agenda was with welcome intro by Sherry, as you saw, and then I'm Darlene will do candidate introductions, individual questions, and this is the wrong agenda. This is, I have a feeling it's the wrong presentation, actually, unfortunately. Yeah, unfortunately, it's the wrong presentation. But you know what? We're just going to go through it, I guess. Huh? Yeah, you have the link. So I'll go through the first questions, but if they can switch the presentation. So Sherry is who you just met, is the CEO of the Foundation of Hispanic Education. I am Darlene Tennis, a born and raised East Sider. I'm just up the hill here. And so I'm very happy to have these wonderful candidates here tonight in our East Side. And then we are going to introduce Cindy. So Cindy will give you a little bit of background. She was born in, how do you pronounce that, Cindy?
Alamogordo, New Mexico.
Alamogordo, New Mexico. How many people live there?
Of about 50,000 now.
Oh, really? Wow. It's
Not
big.
then.
Bigger now. So she graduated from Monroe Catholic High School and San Jose State University. She was the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisor from 2013 to the present. And she was council member and vice mayor of San Jose from 1999 to 2021. And they're going to switch programs. So I'm going to look at mine while we're doing that. Program. And she was executive officer of the South Bay Labor Council and Working Partnerships USA. She lives downtown with her husband, Mike, and son, Brennan, dog Buddy, and a cat, Jackie. So it was so cute the other day because I saw Mike like taking pictures of you at one of the events. I thought he's still taking pictures of her when she talks so much, but I thought it was so cute. So then we have,
He's a good man.
I think they're switching it, so I will show it though. So we have Matt Mahan. Matt grew up in Watsonville, California. How many people were in Watsonville when you grew up there?
You know, when I was a little kid, it was about 10,000, but over the years, it's also grown to about 45, 50,000. It's grown a lot.
So you guys are both from little towns.
Yeah.
And you both graduated from Catholic schools, because you graduated from Bellarmine College Prep, and then Harvard University, which is Ivy League, total Ivy League. Alum Rock, he was an Alum Rock middle school teacher, I believe at Joseph George.
That's right, right.
At Joseph George for via Teach America And here we go. And so here we go. At Teach America, he was the CEO of Causes, a startup and early Facebook app. He co-founded Brigade, the world's first nonpartisan voter network. And he was San Jose City Council member from 2021 to present. Matt and his wife Sylvia and 2 young children, Nina and Luke, live in the West Santa Teresa foothills and are members of Holy Spirit Church. And his wife actually is the president of Cristo Rey, which is also East Side here as well. So we have, so welcome to the East Side. Where's my East Side peeps? Woo! There you go. So one of the biggest questions, of course, is always the homeless. We have 10,000 unhoused individuals. 250 died on the street this year, and 145 of those were seniors. We have a silver tsunami, which is 58% of the unhoused in Santa Clara County are 50 and older, which is really sad. 20% of pedestrian deaths, as we know, especially particularly on the east side, we have a lot of pedestrian deaths, and they are 20% are unhoused individuals. So how can we get people off the street in a humane way? And I'm going to start with you, Matt.
Great, thank you. And we have, is it 2 minutes or was it 1? What's the timer?
Should be.
Okay, 2 minutes.
What is it 2?
It's 2, yeah.
Okay,
Since we
great.
can't solve homelessness in
Well,
a minute.
yeah, I'm not sure we'll solve it in 2 either. But good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. Really excited to be back. I was a teacher just down the road, as was mentioned. And one of the main things that drew me into this race was feeling that our approach to addressing homelessness simply wasn't working. We're spending a lot of money at one end of the spectrum building $1 million apartments for the lucky few, and then we're spending over $60,000 a year per person on the streets just managing the symptoms of street homelessness. And I think that we need a new approach, one that is more pragmatic, more cost-effective, where we look at everything from a sanctioned encampment on government-owned land or multiple with on-site services and security to using prefabricated modular units to scale up basic shelter with on-site services. And I think we need to hold our county accountable for expanding inpatient treatment for addiction and mental illness. And I think it's that lack of those middle solutions of having sufficient inpatient treatment facilities, not enough basic cost-effective but still safe and dignified shelter, and solutions like even a sanctioned encampment. I'm moving forward an RV safe parking site in my district. We're going to need to move much faster and more pragmatically to get the nearly 6,000 people in our city living outdoors into safe, managed environments. I think the status quo is totally unsustainable, it's unsafe, it's inhumane, and I think we need a very different direction if we're going to actually end street homelessness, because we're spending more than ever, and yet the number of people living on the streets is the highest it's ever been. Was that 2 minutes? I didn't.
You know what, I'm not timing
You're not
this.
timing us. Okay, great. All right. Well.
But if you're done, you're done. Go
All
ahead.
right. Well, first of all, I also want to say thank you to all of you being here. And it's great to see so many really young people here as well, and students. So thank you for your participation this evening. You know, since 2015, the county, in partnership with all of the cities, has housed almost 20,000 people that were unhoused. We still have 10,000 on the street. And most of the people we housed in available affordable housing, or we housed people on government property with housing that we're building. One of the challenges is that we have to use so many different tools to house our homeless, meaning that we've got to find housing now, we have to build permanent supportive housing, because one of the biggest challenges we have is we don't have enough permanent places for people to live. And we didn't build enough extremely low, very low, and low-income housing. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that when I very first served on the city council and I was leaving there, we were investing in shelters, in temporary housing. The fact is, even then we needed to be investing in permanent solutions. It doesn't mean that we won't use interim housing too, but eventually interim housing will require people to have a permanent place to go. The reason I want to be mayor of San Jose is I know that we can get the county and the city working much more closely together so we can move people more quickly from the streets into permanent housing.
Thank you.
Are we going back and forth on these, or is it?
No, do you have something else to say?
Well, I think the reason we need a significant change in strategy is that this 10,000 left to house is a little misleading in the sense that 5 years ago it was more like 6,000. So I think we're actually going in the wrong direction. We're spending a lot of money, but the solution isn't scaling. At 5 years to build and now nearly $1 million a door, this approach of passing a bond, which by the way costs twice as much to pay off. So it's $1 billion bond, but it'll cost about $2 billion to pay off because it's debt with an interest rate. And then taking 5 years to build at what's now going to be $1 million a door, where the number of people living outside has gone from 6,000 to over 10,000. We're just going in the wrong direction. We need a very different approach. Now, I do agree, I think an area where we agree is that we absolutely need to build more affordable housing. But I don't know that we should wait to end street homelessness to solve the affordable housing crisis. And the answer to addressing the affordable housing crisis in many ways is not just passing very expensive bonds to fund it through public subsidy. It's to look at the barriers to building housing, which are our slow permitting processes, the incredibly high fees that we charge, environmental review processes that can take over a year even to build apartments in places like downtown on a surface parking lot. We broke the housing market in California by having too many regulations and too many fees. That's why we don't have affordable housing. So the idea that we're going to solve affordable housing and end homelessness by passing a bond that you all have to pay for and then building apartments at $1 million a door just doesn't add up. We're not going to get there that way. So that's I guess my response.
Well, and let me just add something. First of all, nobody's waiting. And second of all, we're not doing one thing. We're doing many, many, many things. And this is really important because if we had been building affordable housing all along, we would not have as many people on the streets as we have, period. And the other thing I would just say is housing 20,000 people isn't waiting. That's not waiting. Of the people that we've housed to date, a little over 2,000 of them are in new housing. But we need to move on all levels as quickly as possible. Not one thing, not another. And I think it's a gimmick, honestly, to focus on one solution of interim housing because eventually interim housing means that people are going to need permanent housing. That's what shelters are. Now, the county, just to be clear, under my direction, it's true, I worked really hard to get that housing bond passed. I worked really hard to get those 20,000 people housed. We also are putting money into interim housing now. And many of you have seen the interim housing we're doing because you'll see it in front of City Hall. That housing is primarily focused on women with children. So we have about 50 some odd people living there. They're living there temporarily while we get them permanent housing near a school that they can go to, that they know they're going to be able to go to for a long term. So I don't want to give anybody the impression that we're waiting. And oh, by the way, most of the interim housing that's getting built outside of money that we got from the state of California, some is coming from the city of San Jose, much of it coming from the county, again, because my colleagues believe we have to move on all cylinders to address this issue.
So I want to allow, because homelessness is a big issue for us, but there's a lot of people that are saying that you've listed your successes in getting people housed and all that, but that overall people feel like it has not been successful. That we have a larger homeless problem than ever, and that we're not moving forward. We're moving back, or I don't know, we're moving forward to more unhoused people and more issues. So I think the big question people are always asking is like, you were city council, you were a county supervisor, you have been working on homeless issues for a while, but how do you consider yourself what you've done as success, even though the numbers are up?
I think housing 20,000 people is important and good work, and I think for those 20,000 people, yes, I think they would say it was a success for them. Now, does it mean that we've done all we can and that we can't do more? Absolutely not. And that's why, even prior to Councilmember Mahan being elected, we were already investing in interim housing, and we are already investing in housing on public lands. And as an example, You know, I serve on the Valley Transportation Authority Board, and the Valley Transportation Authority Board had 200 acres of land that they could have sold. I asked them to do an analysis of what would happen if we kept that land. On all of that land, which are near transit hubs, we are building housing on public land with 35% of it being affordable housing. Extremely low, very low, low, and moderate income housing. So I think that, yes, we have more to do, and we're looking at every single tool we have to accomplish what we know needs to happen, which is creating more places that are affordable for low-income people in our community to live.
And Matt, you're a brand new council person. As you know, you've been there very short time. Cindy's been around for quite some time. I've known her for
Yeah,
quite some
thanks.
She has a lot of experience. So you have a lot of experience in the business world, but not in public sector. So why do you feel that your ideas are going to be successful?
Yeah, thanks. Because I can analyze the same data that all of us see out in the community. I think that our longtime elected officials have largely failed us on housing policy. And that 20,000 people housed number is again, 90% of that was existing housing. That's the Section 8 system. That's the affordable housing that already exists. It's not like Supervisor Chavez just went and built 20,000 homes out there herself. I mean, that was a whole system that was already in place. And it's great that it's helped people, but I look at the trend line. And the trend line is we're spending a lot of money, we've increased your taxes, we've passed more bonds, and we have more people on the streets than ever before, and housing is less affordable than ever before.
So what
So
exactly,
I think that if you look at the underlying problem around affordable housing, and by the way, I don't think we should wait to end street homelessness. New York City has a higher rate of homelessness per capita than we do, but the unsheltered rate is single digits. We have the highest unsheltered rate in the country. Over 80% of our homeless population lives outside on the streets. 250 people died on the streets last year. So street homelessness, we should act with full urgency like a hurricane just hit and end street homelessness. But affordable housing, our elected officials for years have been failing us on not acknowledging that we have broken the housing production market. We have passed so many rules, so many processes, so many fees that developers, people who build housing, don't want to build housing here anymore. It's too expensive. They can't, in many cases, can't get a loan to build the housing. So, I mean, I have been studying these issues for years. I served on the leadership group board for 7+ years. I was the chair of Joint Venture Silicon Valley, served on that board for 7 years. I have been studying public policy and involved in these conversations for many years, and the data is very clear. We are not building the housing we need. We have seen 6 jobs created in our region for every home we've built over the last decade plus. 6 jobs for every 1 house. And we're in the way. It is largely government regulation and policy from the state to the local level that is making it impossible for us to build the housing we need.
So we're going to move on to the next topic, and we could talk all day on homelessness because it's a big issue, but we have a lot of stuff. So as you know, here on the east side, we have a lot of people that have small businesses, and you know, everything from electricians to plumbers to, you know, the little panaderia truck, which I love from the east side. But we have a lot of people that are small business owners, and we spend a lot of money bringing Google in and things like that, but how do you expect to support, and I'll have you start, Cindy, the small businesses?
Well, first of all, I think that we need to make it much easier to use our planning, building, and code enforcement department. It's understaffed dramatically right now, and it's the nerve center of the city of San Jose. And what that means is that if you're going to open a business or build a home or build housing, that you need that department to act as if it was their business that was getting started. And so the first thing we need to do is make sure that we're dealing with the backlog so that we're moving much more quickly to help people get their permits, any permits that they need. And actually, Councilmember Deb Davis had a really good idea, which is taking the environmental health department at the county and marrying that with the permitting process at the city so that businesses can go to one place and not get sent in 2 different directions, which is something that we'll be pursuing. And then the other thing is that we've worked closely with the SBA and other organizations to make flexible funding available for small businesses. And especially during COVID, one of the things that we did at the county is we made low-interest loans available, but we didn't tell the businesses how to spend it. Some loans were only for for staffing or for tenant improvements, and the loans that we made available were flexible for everyone. And I think we have to trust small businesses to make good decisions for themselves and make those grants available as quickly as possible.
Matt?
Thanks. I've had an opportunity through this campaign to meet a number of small business owners, probably 100 or more at this point around the city, and it's been really interesting to hear their direct experience. The primary message I hear from our small business owners in San Jose is that they want City Hall to get back to basics and to deliver on those core services. They need neighborhoods that are safe. They want faster police response times and accountability when people are committing crime. Right now, our police department, which is thinly staffed, is arresting the same people over and over again because there's a lack of intervention around addiction and mental illness and other challenges people face. They want their commercial districts to be cleaner. They want the city to do a better job of addressing cleanliness and road paving and parking, and yes, also permitting. When they need to make a tenant improvement and have a space that is appropriate for a new business to come in, they need to be able to get that permit much faster. And a lot of that has to do with a high vacancy rate that is totally unacceptable. We have a 26% vacancy rate in our planning department right now, and one of my top priorities as mayor will be closing that vacancy rate so that we can permit or process permit applications much faster. But by and large, what I hear every day from small business owners is really the same things I hear when I knock on your doors, which is that people want to see City Hall get back to basics of public safety, addressing crime more effectively, cleaning up the city, dealing with parking and road paving, and creating the conditions for their customers to patronize their businesses. And I'll just add one final thing. I think that one of the best things we can do for our small businesses over time is build housing near those commercial districts so that we have more of a built-in customer base where people can walk down along the street and go to those small businesses. And so more mixed-use development along our major corridors is really, I think, the final piece.
Thank you. So the next is public infrastructure. These are slightly, because I'm going to talk about the Alum Rock developments, but in talking to some engineers, they're saying we do not have the infrastructure for all these high rises and all these buildings that are coming up. I mean, we're paving the roads, but have we, put new piping in? As it is, electricity around here goes out. People can't get their Wi-Fi, all this, and you're putting in more and more and more stuff. We don't have the infrastructure for it. We don't have the water treatment plants. We don't have new schools. We don't have the sewage or the waste treatment. We don't have all this infrastructure to support all this new high-rise housing that you guys are planning to do. So how are you going to handle that? I think, Matt, you're first now.
Sure. I am very worried about infrastructure as well. When we talk about getting back to basics, I would say public safety, number one. Public infrastructure is right up there, though. So roads, bridges, sewers, the electrical grid. Now, we don't manage the electrical grid, to be clear, and Valley Water does your water supply. But the city does have a role to play in much of our public infrastructure. And right now, the truth is, because we are trying to do too many things as a city, every year we fall about $100 million behind in deferred maintenance on our infrastructure. And so when I talk about getting back to basics, there are hard trade-offs we have to make. Our city over time, because we want to be responsive to the various things we hear in the community, keeps taking on more and more and trying to solve more and more problems. But fundamentally, having a sewer system that works and roads that are well maintained and parks that are well maintained and having our police and fire stations be well maintained is really, really important. And I think we have to be, and it's not just us, it's the state, it's Valley Water, it's all these levels of government, have to be clear with you all about what it costs to properly maintain infrastructure and expand it. If we're going to have a clean energy network, we need big investments in energy storage so that we can keep using more solar, which is highly intermittent during the day. We have to be able to store that power so we can use it at night. And so there are a lot of infrastructure investments we need to make. And I guess what I would just say is in our budget process, you have my commitment that public safety, public infrastructure, basic services like code enforcement and planning are going to be very much prioritized in the budget that I propose, because I think we need to do fewer important things really well rather than spread ourselves telling you that we're doing everything but doing none of it well. And so that's part of the mindset I'm trying to bring to City Hall.
So, thank you for that help. You know, as it relates to infrastructure, I would just say that one of the opportunities that we have is that all cities, not just ours, are going to need to be built for resilience. What does that mean? It needs to be built to have less water. It needs to be built in a different way because it's going to get hotter. As we think about climate change, we're going to have to make investments in our infrastructure that are very different in some respects than they have been today. I just want to give an example. The sewage treatment plant, it's funny that you listed, I swear to God, Darlene, you're the only person who would have thought of that. But it's such a big piece of infrastructure, and the Valley Water and the city of San Jose and other cities have been fighting over how to make those investments for years. And some of the things that we need to do is stop the fighting, focus on what the infrastructure is that we're going to need, get everybody to agree to it, and then start to invest in it in really robust and thoughtful ways. I also just want to say for us, infrastructure is an opportunity to get people jobs, to keep people working, to keep the ecosystem of the city functioning and moving forward. And that's very important. As an example, the significant investment we're going to make to bring BART from Berryessa to the Diridon Arena station, it's good for jobs while it's going on. It's got a great rate of return in terms of people being able to access jobs in different places, being able to get to school. So you look at things like BART, and that's a very, very exciting opportunity. And yes, it does cost money. It's a very, very important tool for us, but those investments are going to make cities like San Jose healthier and more resilient into the future.
I'm going to tell you why I thought about sewage, because I was in Hollister. I was in Hollister, and they have all these signs throughout Hollister. It says, "Keep Silicon Valley trash out." I was a little offended, okay? And then I realized what they were talking about is that we actually take our trash to Hollister because we don't have room here. And so what they were talking about is that we're sending all of our sewage over to Hollister. And then what are they going to do?
Huh.
Yeah, I didn't.
I have more to learn on that, yeah.
Yeah, so I always thought that was interesting. Here we go. Form-based zoning. Okay, so form-based zoning, you could read this, but basically there's areas in certain cities, say like Solvang or Miami Beach, where they want a certain look and feel for the area. They keep certain structures. They have certain requirements that the buildings need to have in order to be built there. And so they have a more streamlined process for it to happen. These were two high-rises that were planned to be put around where Orchard Supply Hardware is. They're like six-story high places. I don't feel like a thoughtful process was done in this area. And again, all up Allen Rock Avenue, if you guys look at the plans, they're planning all these high-rises all the way down from White Road to 101. We are the only place in the city that has this form-based zoning. The only place in the city, which means that they do not need to get city council approval to have these buildings built, okay? So I'm not happy about that. And so this is a major Allen Rock development spurred by unusual zoning law. Unfair zoning in San Jose comes under fire by Allen Rock advocates. So I think I'm going to go back one. So I think you are up, Cindy. So what are you going to do about our form-based zoning?
So I'll just say, for those of you who missed our forum in the primary, this is the one question that will probably get asked back, no matter how many times we come back. I mean, I think that the east side of San Jose shouldn't be treated differently than any other part of San Jose. Mm-hmm. And if it's the only place that has form-based zoning, it is the only place that has form-based zoning, it should be removed.
I agree. I think there are really two problems with zone-based forming, and I fully agree that East Side San Jose should not be treated differently, should not be the city's guinea pig. If we want to try form-based zoning, let's pick another neighborhood that hasn't been so historically marginalized, frankly, and so I fully agree with that. The two problems with it, I think it was well intended, of course, as all policies are, even the ones that aren't working or that fail. But the two problems I see are, one, the lack of community engagement and input. And I think it's really important that we bring people along in the process and that people get to help shape the projects that are built and that they make sense for the community. I also think the other piece is it basically allows for flexible use, which sounds good, but what it means is that whatever is the most profitable thing to build can be multiplied, and you're not getting the diversity of uses that you may need in a given area. And so there's a reason we have planning and zoning, which is in part to think holistically about what are all the different things you need in a given neighborhood. And my concern with form-based zoning, in addition to the lack of community engagement, is that you can get a very homogeneous area where everything is the same use. And I think that's another failure mode with it. So thus far, from everything I've seen, it's been a failed experiment. I think it's one we should pull the plug on and understand if there's something we missed that worked in other cities, let's learn from that. But if we're going to experiment again, let's not do it in East Side again.
So this is the zero parking. So it's up in City Council, and I know you voted for a study already, correct? So this is where the new developments that are coming in all of San Jose, correct?
Well, that's the discussion.
That's the
So
discussion.
the staff is studying it. This has not been passed yet.
So the developers will have zero parking requirements, which means they can build these 6-rise and have no parking available for the tenants, okay? So where are the people going to park? Because as we know, we already have parking issues, okay? As you can see, flooded by parked cars. We already have parking issues on the east side, and this is something else that I think will be detrimental to small businesses, because they're going to be parking in their parking spots that are reserved for clients. The other thing about the zero parking, and I know everybody's gung-ho on it, and in fact some of our sponsors are, but but I see it being very prejudicial to lower income people, because the people, and we'll get into the affordable housing, are predominantly elderly, women, young mothers with children, and disabled. How are they going to go, and let's say Alum Rock, because you guys are from here, go to Lucky's grocery store and bring their stuff? Because all they're telling us is like, oh, we encourage you to walk, bike, or take transportation. So how is a mother with a couple kids going to drop her kids off at different schools? How is an elderly person going to get her groceries and walk them back? We're going to have more crime, for one, because they're walking them. And then you're being prejudicial to these families where they're not going to be able to join Girl Scouts or the baseball team or this and that. So I see how yeah, it's great. And I know why, because the developers, it's too expensive for the developers to add parking. It costs them more money. And so so you guys wanted to be welcoming to developers to come into San Jose. But who are you putting above? Are you putting the developers above the people? What's going on here? I don't know who is next.
I think I'm up this time.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so let me give you, the council unanimously voted to study this, and I raised a lot of questions and have a lot of concerns. So let me give you the case for eliminating, but when we say eliminate, keep in mind, typically as a condition of getting a loan to build housing, the lender will require a certain amount of parking, and the builder will typically need to include parking because it becomes very hard to lease an apartment if you don't have any parking for the people living there. So there will be parking on many of these. The argument for at least relaxing the requirement is it is one of the big drivers of cost that is making housing so unaffordable. Depending on the building, per space, requiring parking on site in the building can add up to, it can be $100,000 per parking space. That's if you're building underground. That's pretty extreme. But it can be $50,000 to $100,000. It's very expensive. So I have no interest, just to be clear, in helping the developers. It's what is the cost per unit to build. Parking is very expensive. Our city has 8 parking spaces for every 1 car. We have a lot of excess parking that is empty all day, all the time. We have other neighborhoods, and I know many of you here live in neighborhoods where the opposite is true. You've got to park 4 blocks from your own home to walk home, which is totally unacceptable. So I think that when this comes back to council, what we need to find is the middle ground where we bring down the cost of building housing in places where our assessment is either that there is enough parking to sustain that parking out on the streets, or where in a place like downtown, you have a garage where you can do shared use, where the workers who come to downtown use the garage during the day, and the people who live in the new building can use that shared garage at night. So we want to be more efficient in using all of the parking that we've built. Remember, $50,000 to $100,000 a space. We have 8 parking spaces for every 1 car in the city. So we should be more efficient and bring down the cost of building new housing, but we have to make sure people can park. And in your neighborhoods here, from what I've seen, we need to be adopting things like a residential permit parking program to make sure that the people who are residents of the neighborhood have a place to park. And that's a huge issue here. We can't have a one-size-fits-all policy for the city.
Yeah, so, I just want to start by saying that, I live in downtown San Jose and have family that live here that I have to park at their houses. And it can be very difficult to do that, in part because on the east side, we really don't, we have so many families that are living in single-family housing that it's not the permits, because frankly, you would have enough, you could prove that people live at the home that they're at. And so in any case, we're very, very crowded in different parts of the city. There are some places it makes a lot of sense to remove parking requirements, or to lower them. But if we do that, the surrounding neighborhoods need to have permit parking so that you're protecting the surrounding neighborhoods from the new development. And one of the things that we've seen in different parts of the city is you have people who've built, either mid-rise housing or even, townhomes that only have a limited amount of parking. And what happens is it pushes, those folks push into the neighborhood, and then those neighborhoods are pushing into other neighborhoods. So it's sort of a, it's a domino effect, right? And it's very, very damaging to the quality of life. So I'm looking forward to this study. It makes a lot of sense in my mind for downtown. It makes a ton of sense in areas where you have mixed uses, and especially near transit stations. I think that's another opportunity. One thing to remember too is that for transit, we think a lot about building housing near transit. The bigger driver for whether or not someone gets on transit is actually whether or not their job is close to transit. And so being able to share, share parking and share those structures is really critical. Because they are expensive. And I think the other thing is we're going to see new modes of transportation that are going to make it easier in some parts for people to be able to use shared vehicles and the like. But in the meantime, for the neighborhoods we represent, it's just too crowded already.
Okay, we're going to go to 1 minute because we have a short period of time. I know Cindy has to leave at 7:30. So can I have the students come up?
Okay. Just want to make sure I wasn't pulling.
It's all your fault.
I just want to mention quality of life, because a lot of times we talk about affordability and all that, but we have to think about the whole quality of life here. This is why we got this mass exodus of people. And we're to talk about affordable housing, and this is just for your information. It should be no more than 30% of somebody's income. Only 1 in 4 people who qualify for HUD assistance actually receive it. This is, again, what we were talking about, affordable housing. 36% elderly, 24% have disability, and 35% have kids. And so with affordable housing units that are being built as well with the buildings, sometimes only 15% of those units are required, and hopefully at least 25%. So not when you're seeing those buildings, not necessarily all of them are affordable housing. So low-income kids living in a stable, affordable home are more likely to thrive in school, attend college, and earn more as adults, whereas low-income kids have more behavioral problems. They don't perform well in school and are more likely to drop out. So, I do have one more. You know what, I'm going to skip this, but I'll just tell you what this is if we have time. I don't think we're out of time. A lot of people talked about vacant properties in their neighborhoods. And back to this, if you saw, I know you guys saw the St. John Vianney's that converted their convent into teacher housing. And so we were talking about, I'm not going to ask this question, but I'm just going to, because we're running out of time, creating creative housing alternatives? Why are we not looking at our current inventory that we have in the city of San Jose? Because there's a lot of empty buildings, there's a lot of empty houses. Or like what are we doing about that? But I'm going to go to student questions. Okay, because we need to get to students. So please state your name and what school you're from. So actually, this is the first one. Your priority B?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, hello, my name is Myra Suarez. I am from Luis Valdez Leadership Academy. Hello, candidates. My question today is, what will be your priority, making homes for the unsheltered or making rent more affordable?
Again, thank you. Thank you very much for the question. And I want to say that I don't think this is an or question. I think it's an and question. And here's what I mean by that. One of the challenges we have is that even with manufactured housing, you still have to go through the same process with the city. So the processes need to change so we move much, much faster on getting housing available. So for example, the faster we build affordable housing, the more it will start to bring down cost over a period of time. And so we have to be able to both make sure that we're building more housing and that we're housing people who are unsheltered. And frankly, I think that if we can do both better, we're going to be much more able to make a city that everybody can afford to live in. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
question.
Thanks for the question, Mara, right? Myra, good to see you again. Thanks for the question. So I talked about this a bit earlier, and I really think our current strategy, unfortunately, for addressing homelessness looks a lot like what we might do to address affordable housing, but when we do it in government and have all these different funding sources, it's actually more expensive than it even costs private sector developers to build. It's kind of crazy. We're paying a huge premium to actually build affordable housing through government. It's shocking. Hundreds of thousands of dollars per unit more when we do it. So I think the different approach we need that takes this from an or to an and is to push down to this end of the continuum to triage and address street homelessness, which is a huge humanitarian crisis, but we need to be much faster and more cost effective, and then get real and honest about what has prevented us from building enough housing to balance with our growing population. And that has a lot to do with our permitting processes, our environmental review, our labor laws, and they're all well-intended and good laws, and all the mitigation fees. We have to really, as a state, frankly, not just as a city, really rethink this and significantly streamline how we're improving housing.
Thank you.
Where's my timer?
Yeah.
She's waving her little thing over there. So gentrification. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Victor Heredia. I'm a sophomore here at LCPA. And the question was, what are you guys' viewpoints, or what are the positive and negative effects of gentrification in our San Jose neighborhoods?
And Matt, you start.
Thanks, Victor. I like the way you pose the question, because the reality is we want investment, we need housing, we want businesses. Gentrification gets overused as this blanket statement of, oh, it's all bad, and the truth is there are trade-offs. I think what we have to do is attract investment, but our role in government is to shape it in a way that makes it work for the community and offer the greatest benefit. And so we know that building the housing we need is going to lead to some displacement. How can we mitigate that? Well, one thing we're looking at is having a local preference for the affordable housing we build with our inclusionary zoning policy. So when we build new market rate housing, you mentioned 15% of it, and we need to actually get it built on site, not just a fee that gets paid out. Making that actually giving a preference for the folks who are in the neighborhood already and are at risk of getting displaced. And so I think we need to come up with creative strategies for making that investment and that growth work for the community. But to have no investment or growth ultimately is going to make us all worse off. So there are trade-offs. It's a good way to ask the question.
Victor, thank you very much for the question. You know, the truth is that for a lot of our communities, as new money comes in, it starts to cost our families out. And so there are three things that we are trying to do, and one thing that I've led on the county, and that is creating opportunities for our local nonprofits to be community development corporations themselves and land trusts, so that they're able to support people who live in the community being able to buy homes in their own community. The second thing is there's a new state law that's going to make it easier for cooperatives, for people in the community to come together and start their own businesses and be able to invest in those businesses in their communities. Because the fact of the matter is that we want to be able to invest in our communities and encourage people to stay in them. You know, a lot of times, at least when I was growing up, I know that our parents would say, we're going to help you succeed because someday you're going to go somewhere else. Well, the fact of the matter is, I want your brains and your talent to stay here in San Jose and on the east side of San Jose to make it better and better and better. So we have to look at systems that allow us to invest in our communities and invest in our people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Denise Reyes from Roberto Cruz Leadership Academy. I'm a senior, and my question today is, what is your viewpoint on allowing non-citizens to vote?
Thank you. Denise?
Correct.
Thank you, Denise. Well, I don't support non-citizen voting. What I do support is the work that we've been doing to try to fix a very, very broken immigration system. I think one thing that people don't know that are not, depending on what country you're from or how long you've been here, that the path to citizenship could be a path to opportunity or a path to nowhere. And for a lot of Latin American immigrants, it's a path to nowhere. And so we've really got to fix that system. The other thing I'll just say is that as a member of the Board of Supervisors, I started the Office of Immigrant Affairs because I wanted to have a place that people could go with their families to learn about what resources were available. And we've also invested in supporting DACA youth and getting, you know, and I know it's such a confusing thing because it keeps changing, but to make sure they have legal representation. So every single one of our kids gets a chance to stay here and thrive. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I agree. I think we want citizenship to be an aspirational thing that people earn that includes that right to vote for one's representatives, but we have to acknowledge that we have gone on for far too long with a broken immigration system, a broken naturalization process, and we have to fight harder to create pathways for anyone who wants to make that commitment to this country, to be a citizen, to give them a path to get there. And I think our current approach is totally unacceptable. And as mayor, I will be very vocal in fighting for expanding pathways to citizenship.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Melina. I'm a senior at Notre Dame High School, and I'm also the founder and president of the League of Young Women Voters at Notre Dame High School. And as a leadership group that represents young people, not only in our school, but also in the San Jose community, I wanted to ask what your plan is on incorporating our voices into your decision-making and getting our voter registration numbers up, because we're the lowest voter registration turnout in the country.
Oh, that's a different question. That's okay.
Thanks. I think my first this time. Yeah, thanks, Melina, and good to see you again. I think you were at our last
Yes.
forum. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for being so civically engaged. As mayor, I will lead the same way that I have as a council member and through my campaign. My campaign is run, you can meet some of them in the back, it's run by basically 50 local high school and college students. We have an incredibly youth-driven campaign. I think that expanding opportunities for young people to serve on boards and commissions, to actually have access to not just elected officials, but probably more importantly, professional city staff so that they can have those interactions is really important. In my district, we were struggling to get young people to participate in our community association, so we created a youth-based community association where they could build the board and lead the organization. And so I'm always trying to think of creative ways of creating vehicles for youth participation that are designed by youth and work for youth and are engaging for our young people. And as a former public school teacher, I very much plan as mayor to be out going to our schools, meeting with our students, and inspiring them to get more involved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Melina, thank you for your good work. And I think you ask a really, really important question. But the first thing I would ask you is for you to tell us, what do you think the best way is for us to get young people engaged and excited about public service and about voting? Because you're gonna, one thing I've learned talking to y'all is that after you're 20, you all don't want to listen to us. So I'd be interested in your ideas. And then the other thing I would just make an observation about is this. Across the country, there's a huge battle over the rights of people to vote in our country. State by state, we have legislators trying to take that right away. And so I think there are two things that we need to focus on. I think one is that in California, and actually Santa Clara County, you may not know this, was the first county to make it free for everybody to vote. And for some families, that was a lot. You have 4 voters in a house or 6 voters in a house, and you're spending $1.50 to get people to vote, to send in their ballot is a problem.
Thank you.
Yikes. All right, well, Melina, I'll work with you with it.
Thank you.
Well done.
We have very limited time. I'm going to tell you, I have some individual questions, and Cindy does have a hard stop at 7:30.
We both do.
Oh, you
Are
both
we
do?
doing
leaving you.
closing or no?
Well, we're probably not going to do closing statements then. So I just want to say something about these 2 individuals, because there's a lot of people that really trash both of them, depending on who they're behind and supporting. And it really kills me, because I think they're both really good people. And I think you just have to really decide, who is it that you think is the best hire for the job? Because your vote is voting to hire this person to do the job. So I hate it when people are all constantly saying, I guess we have to choose for the worst of 2 evils or things like that, because these are not evil people. Okay, they are very good people, and they're committed to doing work in the community. And I just, really take your time to read both of their websites and decide who you think you should hire for the position. That being said, I am going to bring up some of the issues, and it's hard because we don't have a lot of time. So I'm going to go through all of them with you and then have you just address it, because we have very limited time. So the 49ers have given Cindy, I forget, $732,000 or something. And I know somebody had told me, well, they got a lot of money to give away. I can tell you right now that rich people do not just give their money away. The reason why they're rich is because they invest their money. And so they invested their money in Cindy for a reason. And then the other thing that's put in, the 49ers did a lot of investment on the Santa Clara City Council. And now, if you've been keeping up, there's a grand jury report saying that the city council members that they did back and put a lot of money behind were looking out for the interest of the 49ers and not of the people, because they were meeting with lobbyists all the time. There's this whole grand jury report about all of that. So when we see this large investment with you, people are concerned the same thing's going to happen here. And I'm going to keep going just because I was going to have you individually answer things. The reason why I'm bringing up the LA City Council with the racist remarks in the leaked video has nothing to do with racist remarks, but part of the video that you saw with the LA City Council was the stronghold of the unions, and the unions in LA were, it's all about union, all about Latinos, all about Democrats, and then they were talking against the black people, okay, in there. So when you see that, because these are some of the same, as you know, Cindy's very strong with the unions. So is Cindy, there's a particular person who has said very negative things about Cindy that are not necessarily true, but one of the things that has come up is that they're doing the same thing here. We have this Latino union, Democrat only thing, and the Vietnamese community is saying they're shutting us out, like how they shut the people out in LA. So the same backdoor deals are happening here. So the other thing is Chavez, and I gotta say, Cindy's like one of the smart.
My God.
I know, this is like way back. This
Wow.
is way back. I know, but I'm doing it. I was gonna have them address each thing individually, but we're running out of time. So with Cindy.
Darlene, let me just answer the question that you're asking, because this, first of all,
Well, let me say this, Cindy. So I think Cindy is one of the smartest people I know. So when I read this, or I saw the attack ads, and I'm going to talk about both people's attack ads, okay? She's like this, knows everything off the top of her head. So when I heard that you responded 75 times, I don't recall or I don't remember, that kind of surprised me, to be honest with you. But go ahead.
Oh, my God, Darlene. Well, first of all,
I have to bring all this
no,
up.
you don't, and you don't, A, and B, you brought it up at the end at a time when we told you what time we had to leave, and it's not really fair to the people I'm going to be late for, because I want to respond to this, and I'm not going to do it in a minute. That's so inappropriate. So inappropriate. So let me start with the first or the last thing I can see, and you're going to have to go backwards so I can remember all the sins I've been accused of. But let me start with this. I was asked to be a witness in a case that now occurred over 20 years ago, but to be a witness. I answered every single question I was asked honestly, and that's what you're asked to do when you go to a grand jury. So there's nothing nefarious about it, including that the case was ultimately dismissed against Mayor Gonzalez, and the judge called it a political case, which is, again, disappointing because it was intended to hurt me then as a mayoral candidate and brought up again to hurt me now as a mayoral candidate. On the other issue that you raised, let me just talk about the 49ers. And I say this in a room full of Raider fans, so let me let me recognize the group I'm talking to, and say this, that I had an incredible opportunity to work with many, many businesses when COVID-19 hit. One of the first businesses that was interested in coming forward and helping not just the county, but nonprofits, because remember that when COVID-19 shut everything down, we had all these nonprofits that do their events in the spring or the fall to get their general operating money. And so I needed those nonprofits to function because I needed them to get PPE and feed people and do all the things that they were doing for those that were still going back to work. And I reached out to a number of companies and asked them if they would help invest money in these nonprofits. The 49ers were one of the first companies that said yes, and they agreed to challenge other companies to do the same, which allowed us to raise millions of dollars for these nonprofits, and they let us do this at the stadium. In addition to that, we had the largest vaccination site in the country in partnership with them, which is what I work with them on. I can't talk to them because this is an independent expenditure to the campaign, but my hope is that the reason they're investing in my candidacy is because they know I'm going to make San Jose safer and cleaner, because they know that's the kind of work I did with them. And then on the other issue, related to which you tried to tie to the LA issue, which I think is just really bad form, honestly. But let me just say this. We live in one of the most diverse places in the world. And I know that the people that I represent, all of you, you're amazing, wonderful people, and our community gets more and more diverse. I have played a leadership role in advancing the Latino community, the African American community, and the Vietnamese community. I had a conflict with one individual who was supporting Mr. Mahan, who was making some comments that were both untrue and inappropriate, and I deemed them to be such that they were defamatory, and so I asked an attorney to send a cease and desist letter because the person was referring to me as a communist. And in the Vietnamese American community, that's very, very loaded, and the language wasn't exactly that, but it intimated that, and I asked a lawyer to step in. It has been my great, great, great honor to be a leader in this community. And I'm going to wrap up by saying this. The reason I'm running for mayor is I work for all of you. I have always represented the toughest to serve communities, meaning low income and not voting and all the challenges with our community. I know my job is to be excellent at what I do because I have to fight for all of you. And so with all the questions, and frankly, the reason we take this kind of is because of the work we get to do. And I'm sorry I didn't get to talk about that. I thought we were going to get a closing statement because I would have told you what an honor it's been to serve you and what an honor it's been to be here tonight in spite of that.
It was about 6 minutes.
So,
Jeez, I'm so sorry.
so Matt, can you play the video over there? So this is a video, a hit video on you.
Great. I hope I get a 6-minute speech to explain it. But yeah, I'm not sure this was productive, but go ahead since we got to air Cindy's,
Well, the reason why is I feel like you guys should have the opportunity to address
by all
these
means.
attack
Let's,
ads
okay, we're,
that are
sure.
against you guys.
We are 5 minutes late, so we better play the video quickly.
Delta, United, Hertz, FedEx, MetLife all ended their partnerships with the National Rifle Association after the NRA killed gun reforms. As a tech CEO, Mahan was asked on Twitter if he had pitched the NRA to use his company's platform. Matt responded, absolutely. My own beliefs aren't relevant. Cindy Chavez, genuine leadership, a safer San Jose.
Okay, so let me go on with Matt. So this is some other hit pieces on you about your anti-choice. This was actually came from the last debate that I did. They were saying that you're anti-women supporting reproductive health. You're tied in with the right-wing anti-choice, Susan B. Anthony, so there's some conservative Republicans, so they're tying you into NRA, to Trump supporters, things like that. And then one of the things that, again, this is what surprised me with you, because we're a CEO of companies, so how, as a CEO of a company, do you make a mistake like this, misclassifying your employees as independent contractors and not employees? I mean, that was such a simple mistake, and you're going to run a city, right? So, so go ahead and address
Yeah, I mean,
these.
first of all, I would say in both of our cases, when you get a negative mailer funded by a PAC, which we're not allowed to talk to by law, okay? So you should all know your candidates can't talk to PACs, the outside PACs. When you get a mailer, I would just recommend throwing it straight in the trash because it's designed to make you dumber. It is designed to confuse you and mislead you. I would look at our websites, I would look at our endorsements, I would look at our performances in debates, I would look at the policies we've authored, I would look at how we vote, I would talk to people who have worked with us. There's about 20 other things you can look at, 100 other things you can look at to get to know who we are, our differences in philosophy, our differences in approach, what we've done in our careers. Negative mailers are designed by outside special interest groups to try to convince you to vote the way they want you to vote, and they will do it on the thinnest of evidence. On the NRA, I built 2 nonpartisan open internet platforms to promote civic engagement that helped millions of people get civically engaged, that absolutely had every advocacy group under the sun. We had 25,000 nonprofits on our platform of all different viewpoints. And after the Sandy Hook shooting, let me tell you exactly what happened. One progressive activist on Twitter demanded that I kick a CEO of the company, kick the NRA off the platform, even though, by the way, we had a dozen pro-gun control groups on the platform. And I said, no. I said, the whole point of this is to build an open public square on the internet for people to discuss and debate issues, and I don't believe in censorship on internet platforms that are primarily communication platforms like Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. In my spare time, I actually worked with Ron Conway, one of our investors, to help the Sandy Hook families get Sandy Hook Promise up and running and help them build a 1 million-person list. I voted for gun insurance. I have done work for many years on addressing gun violence. So again, they will take the thinnest of things. Yes, I stood up for the NRA's free speech. I did say I think there's a social good in having the NRA online being able to make their debate so you all can see the different sides of the debate and come to an independent decision about where you stand on policy issues. So that's the backstory there. On abortion and GOP and all these things, I don't even know how to, I'm not even going to get into that. I mean, I was walking in the snow in 2007 for Barack Obama before most people knew who he was. I have worked for Democratic candidates my entire life. So I'm just not even going to, I'm anti-choice or I'm a Republican. I mean, I think it's because I'm a straight white guy coming out of the tech world that it's pretty easy to say, oh, he's just a Republican, right? I mean, yeah, I think we should be responsible fiscally, but that doesn't, but anyway, I think it's just, these are designed to distract you. On this one, I mean, look, the reality is the state law changed I told you we had 50 high school and college students running the campaign. Many of them were in and out for 2 or 3 months at a time. Many of them did not have regular schedules. And so we were paying people stipends. And actually, we were approaching this the way that our campaign did 2 years ago, and virtually, as our labor lawyer looked at it, virtually every other campaign in the county has been approaching this. But it is true that with AB 5 passing, that you have to be really careful now. There are many fewer circumstances under which, under the new state law, you can classify someone as an independent contractor. And so for many of our young people, we had to say, I'm sorry, we can't pay you a stipend anymore, because we can't pay 50 people an hourly wage, even though they mostly want the work experience, and we were trying to give them a stipend to cover gas costs. So yeah, you can flip it as, oh, I'm a horrible employer who is, trying to harm and victimize young people. The reality is we got rid of stipends for most people because this new state law makes it harder and harder to actually pay people that way. So, I think in all of these attacks on both sides, you're seeing outside interest groups try to mislead you. I would honestly throw the negative mailers right in the trash and evaluate us on a whole range of other things.
Yes, I agree. Like I said, they're both two very good people, and they're wanting to commit their lives to serving the people. So look at their websites, listen to the answers that they gave, and decide who you want to hire as the next mayor of San Jose. You don't need to you don't need to vilify the other person if you like one person. And that's unfortunately what people do a lot. You say, I'm for this candidate, and then they have to vilify the other one. It doesn't need to be that way. You could just say, this is the person I'm choosing. They're both good people.
And I think we should stop elevating this stuff, honestly.
Yeah.
I'd rather that we debate policy.
Yes.
I have to go.
Yeah, me too.
So sorry.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.